Welcome to Bimadzaji Ginonindwa. This podcast is produced by the Communications Department at the Anishinaabeg Nation. We will be focusing on the issues and initiatives in Anishinaabeg Nation territory. I'm your host, Lisa Abel. You may be wondering, what is the Anishinaabeg Nation and who does it represent? Why is this political advocacy organization sometimes known as the Union of Ontario Indians? In this episode, I asked some of our Anishinaabeg Nation leaders to explain how it all works. I had two conversations, one with Anishinaabeg Nation Grand Council Chief Reg Niganabi and Northern Superior Regional Deputy Grand Council Chief Mel Hardy, and a second chat with Marcia Trudeau-Bomberry, CEO of the Anishinaabeg Nation. We'll hear what they had to say about the Anishinaabeg Nation governance structure and how the Anishinaabeg Nation Secretariat supports our advocacy work across the territory. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Miigwech Auto Financing. Looking to buy a used or new vehicle? Miigwech Auto Financing has a huge inventory of cars and trucks to choose from. Good credit, no credit, bad credit? Miigwech Auto Financing can help you get that vehicle you need. Use promo code AN7GC when you purchase a vehicle at miigwechautofinancing.ca, and $1,000 will be donated to the Anishinaabeg Nation 7th Generation Charity. Head on over to miigwechautofinancing.ca and use promo code AN7GC today. Now, before we get started, as we were developing this podcast, we knew it should have a Anishinaabemowin name. We contacted Barbara Nolan, a proud Anishinaabe who lives in Garden River First Nation. Barbara is originally from Mukwemkong unceded territory. She is an Anishinaabemowan speaker who has spent decades working with many organizations and communities to revitalize our language. Since 2020, Barbara has been the Anishinaabeg Nation's Anishinaabemowan Language Commissioner. Barbara suggested Bimadzaji Ginonindwa as a name for this podcast. I asked Barbara what the phrase means in our language.
So I saw your email.
Okay.
So I see that. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the words correctly.
Yeah.
You said for talking to people,
Uh-huh.
Bimadzaji
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
So wait,
Yeah.
can you say it? So talking to people, can you say it?
Bimadzaji Ginonindwa.
Bimadzaji Ginonindwa.
Yeah.
So what does it mean then? Those two words.
Bimadzaji is people, those people who are alive. Bimadzaji. Ginonindwa comes from Ginonin, to speak to somebody. So that's what it says, speaking to people.
Okay.
Because our language is the opposite of English in the way that they, what do you call that? They place their words. Subject comes first, then the verb, then this, then that. Hey? Our Anishinaabemowan is this way. So in English, speaking to people. In Ojibwe, it's people speaking to.
Okay.
It's opposite.
But then I see that word Bimadzaji looks similar to Bimadzawen.
Well, Bimadis I live. Bimadzawin, life. Bimadzajik, those who have life. It's all about life. Bimadisajik.
And then are there any other meanings inside that word? Ganonindwa?
Gnonindwa. Well, language is very complex, our language. It's full of verbs. It's a verb-based. You can even turn a noun into a verb. But it's like 85% verbs or something like that. Anyway, Gnonindwa, coming from the verb gnona. Gnona is the verb, to speak to someone. Okay? So speaking to them, Gnonindwa. Okay, so you have to put the dwa referring to them. Okay. Ginona for one person. Giganona. Giganonik, he spoke to me. Giganona, I spoke to him. I spoke to them. Giganonak. Okay. Now this one here, Ginonindwa, is those who are being spoken to. Okay. Like you can switch all those things around and the ending will change a little bit.
Mm. So the translation you provided,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to keep practice saying it. Bamatsajig ganonindwa.
Yeah. Bematsujik Ginonindwa. Ginonindwa.
Ganonindwa.
Mm-hmm.
What dialect is that?
Manitoulin.
Okay, so that's Anishinaabemowin Manitoulin dialect.
Yeah.
Chi-miigwech Barbara Nolan for gifting our podcast with an Anishinaabemowin name. Barbara says she's grateful to have survived the attempts of Canada's Indian residential school system to take her Anishinaabe language from her. She says she's now doing all she can to share our language and culture. Her website, barbaranolan.com, has immersion-style Anishinaabe videos, and she's working on an animated children's video series as well. And now, on to our conversation about the Anishinaabeg Nation. Miigwech for being with me today. Welcome. I'm here with Anishinaabeg Nation Grand Council Chief Reg Nikanabi.
Good morning or afternoon.
Bonjour. Marcia Trudeau Bonberry, who is the CEO of the Anishinaabeg Nation. Welcome to the podcast.
Miigwech.
And Northern Superior Regional Deputy Council Chief Mel Hardy.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour, welcome. So let's just start with some introductions. If you'd like to each tell us a little about yourselves.
Sure, I'm Grand Council Chief Reg Nikanabi, born and raised in the Mississauga First Nation between Sudbury and Sault Ste. Marie, right in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory. I was chief in my own community for 10 years before moving on to become the Grand Council Chief of the Anishinaabe Nation.
Good afternoon. Mel Hardy from Rocky Bay First Nation. That's on the southeast end of Lake Nipigon. And I'm a veteran, and I'm a traditional dancer. And I was chief of my community prior to coming to this role as well. And I'll tell you, if I didn't be a chief prior to this role, that wouldn't have gave me the moral attitude to be able to make decisions in a way that was learned as a chief. You have to understand that, because a lot of times when you jump in a position and there's no training book, but then you have the older guys that are mentors.
My role is Enigan Zikadaget, Chief Executive Officer at the Anishinaabeg Nation. I've now been here for just a little over 4 years, having started a few months just before the pandemic. And the role itself is to be the window between the administration and the political office. And on the administration side, we do have a number of staff across many departments and many satellite offices that contribute to the work that we do in advancing the mandates and resolutions and direction of the chiefs. Also working closely with elected leadership, our Grand Chief, Deputy Grand Chiefs, and as well as the staff in political office. And then we've also got a number of chiefs committees and nation building councils that also contribute to the work that we do.
For our listeners who are kind of wondering, what is the Anishinaabeg Nation? You know, who does it represent?
The Anishinaabeg Nation is a political advocacy organization. It's one of the oldest political groups in Ontario, tracing its roots back to the Confederacy of Three Fires. And the Council or Confederacy of Three Fires are made of the Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi. And they're a groups of people who share similar languages and territories, and then met for political purposes and, of course, military purposes over time. In modern day context, the Anishinaabe people will also comprise those who are Algonquin, Mississauga. We also have others, such as the Munsee Delaware, that are part of the group of 39 First Nations. And we have a pretty large footprint across Ontario through the Great Lakes area, with the geographic footprint spanning traditional territories from Thunder Bay, Fort William First Nation area in the Northern Superior region, all the way around Northern Superior, across Lake Huron region to Ottawa, and then south from Lake Huron region to the southeast and southwest regions, which go all the way across Ontario, right to the Aamjiwnaang First Nation territory, which is in the Sarnia area.
So it's a pretty wide geographic area, around the Great Lakes then, that comprises these 39 First Nations that are part of the Anishinaabeg Nation.
For sure. And we know, like, as Anishinaabeg people, even though those are the member communities, there are a lot of other Anishinaabe communities, nations that are not necessarily members of the Anishinaabe Nation, our political advocacy group, but we know that Anishinaabe people reside all across the Great Lakes territory on both sides of the border. So we have advocated and provided support on various issues, water and resource development, for example, with Grand Chief, joining tribal leadership on the south side of the border to continue that work that's needed to advocate and support water rights and pipeline development.
So how does the Anishinaabeg Nation and the Secretariat of the Union of Ontario Indians, how is that structure working to support, the Anishinaabeg Nation?
So the work that we do within the administration, within the Secretariat, is endorsed and advanced by the chiefs, whether it's through chiefs' resolutions or via chiefs' committees, or through our leadership council, which acts as our board of directors. And on the admin secretariat side, we will work to advance those mandates, whether it's through working with other governments or groups. And I guess the best way to approach it or to consider it is that the Anishinaabeg Nation forms a lot of the structure and guidance and protocols for traditional governance, and on the corporate secretariat side is the legal corporation, which is the Union of Ontario Indians, that allows us to seek out funding and to accept funding and to ensure that as an organization we're following things like policies and procedures, we're adhering to employment law, ensuring that everyone's rights are protected within the organization. So it's a balancing act between who we are as Anishinaabe people and the values and principles that guide our work, and then as well as operating under the corporate structure, knowing that there are also laws and policies and procedures that guide our work there.
Okay, let's talk about the governance structure. How does the governance structure of the Anishinaabeg Nation work?
So we do have our Grand Council assemblies. That's where everything starts from. That's where our chiefs come. They, they have their resolutions that they'd like to pass. They submit those probably like a month before to be able to approve them, to see if we haven't already done them or there's something not similar to it already. That's where that starts from. So then we have our voting and everything at the Grand Council Assembly. As resolutions are passed, that's where we get our mandate to do what we need to do. That's passed down to myself and the deputies. We carry out those mandates along with the departments here at the Anishinaabeg Nation to help advocate or, move anything forward that the communities needs, yes. And then create the relationships and follow up on that. That's basically the governance structure, but we also have our leadership council, which is myself and the deputies, which also includes representatives who are chiefs or otherwise from outside of the leadership council itself. Like myself and not the deputies, where they also have their representatives who help oversee and make sure everything happens. And I'd be remiss to forget to mention, Wickwamacong also has a seat at the Leadership Council table, just because of their sheer size, given that they are quite a big population of our First Nations, so they are included within that decision-making process. Very tough position to fill, only because I think they have a very large community that the chief takes care of. And then they also have the responsibility at the Anishinaabeg Nation to be part of that too. So it is a bit of a challenge for time for them.
Okay.
Of course, there's the Treasury Board to approve any kind of funding or spending that might come out. All of that has to be, of course, scrutinized. We don't just freewheel and spend the way you might imagine. And then we also have the executive, which is made up of myself and the deputies who help with the day-to-day operations in terms of which way we're going and where departments are, being steered, or helping advocate for anything that might be needed within those departments too. So it flows back and forth. The departments direct us on what they might need advocacy for. The chiefs might need us what they need advocacy for, so we'll be doing those jobs as we go along.
In our work, we do incorporate and when we can is engage with our nation councils, because that also helps guide our work. For example, if it comes out of a regional chiefs meeting that we need to focus more efforts or energy on, for example, housing, then we would ensure that as we draft a resolution on what the needs are for housing, we would look to those advisory nation councils to ensure that the resolution and the mandate that we're drafting with the chiefs is robust, it's thorough, and it doesn't miss anyone. So we talk about the nation councils. We have our Eshkanijic Council, which is our youth council, our Quewag Council, our women's council. There's the Getzajic Council, which is the elders council. And then we've added 2 new councils, which is the Nunavut Council, the men's council, and then the Two-Spirit Council. And I know that's been translated into an Anishinaabe name as well. So again, our work is guided. And again, the idea there is that our work is robust and thorough, and it doesn't we're attempting to not leave anybody behind.
They're the nation building councils. They help contribute to guiding the nation in that way.
But can you talk some about the kind of traditional governance structures? I notice, we have like a clan system that's really ingrained and implemented within. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It all starts with our Goldway Wangas Anishinaabe, which is our one Anishinaabe family. From there, and everything based within there is how we derive a lot of our information from and a lot of our direction. Of course, it has, the 7 grandfather teachings in there, our relationship and how we have our jurisdiction and everything else along those lines. But for the clan system, and of course this is always being refined, it's not set in stone just yet, and we're working on it. But they do have the process where it is our different clans sit within our different departments, and they help inform a lot of the discussion. We are working now to have it so that they all interact with each other in the form of the clan system and how they would come to decision making, so that we have a more robust understanding or request whenever we have something to change or address, an issue to address.
In terms of like the political traditional leadership and the Totem system, they are aligned with the various clans. So we've got Ajajak Crane Clan, and a lot of the work there centers on government and communications. Hmong, which is the Loon clan, is intergovernmental affairs and treaty rights. Gigon, which is the Fish clan, is lands, resources, and justice. Makwa, which is the Bear clan, is health and healing. Woshkesh, Deer clan, is social development. Wabjishi, which is Martin clan, is revenue, finance, and economy. And then the Miigwech Totem is the Eagle clan, and that's centers on work around employment, training, and lifelong learning. So the various departments within the organization will align with one of the clans, and then they're from a corporate perspective, they're either established into a director, and sometimes there are managers that focus in on special areas. I think one of the best examples might be looking at the lands and resources, where we have also is ECDEV snuggled in there as well. So we have a manager for ECDEV, and then we've also got the manager for lands and resources. But in terms of that structure, it makes sense for them to be together with the same directors, because a lot of their work intertwines.
Interesting. I understand that, the clans, the Totems, that was our traditional form of governance. And we know that Anishinaabeg Nation, the history goes back to, the Three Fires, Confederacy. And then, was there a time where, we didn't have access to governance or these teachings on the clans, and that this was a process of taking back governance through a clan system?
This process here, it was developed by our late head elder, Gordon Wanabans. And one of the things he held in Sault Ste. Marie, and he had all the people in a big room, and a lot of our people don't know their clans, they don't know their name, they don't understand. He did the teachings, he put the clans up and he did those teachings, And what happened is he organized where the clans should be and what they mean and stand for, all this stuff. And people just love that. Then that actually motivated our people just to partake because of their interest, and they started realizing exactly who they were. We talk identity. So it's very important.
And might I say each of the deputies and myself, each hold a different portfolio that are in relation to the clans themselves. So we have all these different processes, but in terms of how they operate now, they do have these different settings, but now we're trying to work into the actual clan and decision making. Like say we have mining come into the decision. Okay, well then how does mining affect lands and resources and justice? How does it impact social development? How does it impact employment training and lifelong learning? What if we put a health and healing lens on it, revenue, finance, and the economy lens on it? And then that needs to come together to be able to inform us on how we should tackle this process or tackle mining or address mining or what is our consensus on mining. So we're actually working on a process where we include the nation building councils within those different dotems too. And it actually becomes a decision-making process and helps inform how we're going to address a lot of these issues. We've got the basis for it. Now we're getting to an exciting time where it's let's bring all of that together and really look at how our traditional governance works.
Our traditional Anishinaabe forms of governance and ways of doing things are really integrated into the organization.
That's right. I mean, I'll look to some of the work that we're advancing in social and in health and know that, you know, if we're looking at the child well-being law or some of the work around Koganoswin and addressing child welfare issues and concerns and needs across our communities, all of the work is centered on Anishinaabe perspective, Anishinaabe protocol, around Anishinaabemowin, integrating language and culture, and Anishinaabe Adzuin, you know, the ceremonial, how we understand our worldview and our place here. So a lot of that is integrated into the work we do. And I gave an example for social, but it's integrated, you know, we can say in all the departments, whether it's lands and resources, health, and it's central to, I think our organization is that when we open up any meeting or any event, even if it's an internal meeting or even if it's with one or two government officials, we always open with our Ngodwa Angazit Anishinaabe. And the Ngodwa Angazit Anishinaabe is the preamble to the Anishinaabe Nation's Constitution. But it's also a reminder, it's not so much a prayer, but a reminder of the gifts that have been given to us to do our work, the gifts of spirituality, the four elements, the values and principles, the seven sacred teachings, and that we acknowledge that we have the sovereignty to govern our work and ourselves, and that we honor and respect the past, present, and future. And we always work to open up our meetings with this, but we also ensure that we do it in Anishinaabemowin, but we also ensure that for those that do not speak Anishinaabemowin, if we're with an external partner, whether it's provincial, federal government, or other, that we translate the meaning and intent of that message.
And also there's the Kwewak Council, the Women's Council, and I guess so they're doing that work, and they also kind of have a traditional role in traditional governance as well, right?
They do, absolutely. Actually, you know what? They do have the role of raising up our, when there's an election and we have a Grand Council Chief or a Deputy Grand Council Chief, they have the role of raising them up and speaking to them. It's in the ceremony, of course, and they speak to them and give them their directions and what they expect of them. And then we go from there. And at the end of everything, when the next election comes, before the next election even happens that morning, they hold another ceremony where they de-blanket and remove the bonnet from the Grand Council Chief or the Deputy Grand Council Chief until the election's over. And then whatever comes out of that, they'll re-blanket whoever it may be.
But then they also have this kind of, maybe not accountability, but they're kind of watching over the kind of work that's happening.
Absolutely. And we've moved to incorporate that a little bit more so. Now we're moving to have the Getsits and the grandmothers, or the Kwewak, sit with us at least once a month to engage us and make sure we're doing all right, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, help guidance, help offer maybe some guidance, some consulting, those sort of things, just to be able to help in the role and ensure that you're walking the right path and, remembering your cultural values.
I think one of the other key areas is that a lot of the work, I did reference our nation councils earlier, but a lot of our work is also supported by the expertise of our commissioners. And I look to, for example, is our Edibendogsujet commissioner, which is Jeanette Corbier-Laval. She's our citizenship commissioner and is central to the rights assertion for women earlier in I believe it was 1971 when she first started her fight for recognition. As she had married a non-Indigenous, non-First Nations man and lost her status as a First Nation woman and picked up that fight. That took a while, but at the same time, it was centered on the principles of who we are as people. And unfortunately, that era was paternalistic, and if you're not a man, then you lost your rights. But that's just one example. But we also have other commissioners. Again, central to our work as an organization is language. Internally integrating into the work we do, but also supporting the work out there in the communities and with other organizations. So we do have an Anishinaabemowin commissioner as well, which is Barb Nolan. Our water commissioner is Autumn Pelche, again, advocating for all those things that surround water, boiling water, safe water, and of course, the ceremonial aspect of water that we have as Anishinaabe people. We have also got our children's commissioner supporting the work of the development of our child well-being law, and then also supporting some of the work that we have ongoing in the reconciliation file, residential schools and so forth. And then our governance commissioner. And again, generally governance is, I think, pretty self-explanatory.
Actually, there's another thing to mention is that we have the Bamoknagon, which is an extension of the Anishinaabeg Nation and covers the 5 communities that are involved in the Anishinaabeg Nation Governance Agreement.
Self-government again, yeah.
Yeah, there's the Kinomadzuin Education Board. They're part of another extension of the Anishinaabeg Nation. They have their own website and link and information. And then we have the Koganoswin that also is an extension of the Anishinaabeg Nation and is getting ready to operate on their own now.
As part of this advocacy work for the Anishinaabeg Nation, then can you kind of share which levels of government you're advocating with?
Generally we're always in discussions with probably provincial more often than not, only because like resources and health, policing, all those sort of things, they have a portion of that's their responsibility on the ground level for the province. But then at the federal level, we also have to advocate for those same things because the province, it's not only a federal responsibility, but the province sometimes pushes it back to be a federal responsibility, saying, well, that's not really our field. You have to go talk with them. So they kind of like play this ping pong game where they send it back and forth between each other. And the feds, of course, will say, well, we don't have any control over OPP or, policing or enforcement within the province. That's their realm. So therefore, go talk with them. So we play this back and forth game. It's an interesting balance, but not just on that level. We advocate with our other organizations within Ontario here, like Anishinaabe ASCII or Treaty 3, or even, just the larger First Nations like Six Nations. And then, of course, we're at the level with Chiefs of Ontario. We operate with them and liaise with them. And then there's also, we've even been to do things with the United Nations in terms of speaking there on water. And then, by extension of that, speaking with Anishinaabe nations on the other side of the border. Let's say President Gravel over in Bay Mills, Indian Band.
So in your view as Grand Council Chief, what are the most important priorities for the Anishinaabeg Nation right now?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. But I think to break it down into a nutshell, it's whatever is the advancement of our communities, our citizens, our people, addressing the issues that are almost systemic by nature. Those are the biggest ones. Like, we're always addressing law and jurisdiction. We have First Nations who would love to create their own laws, but they're being denied that right, or being denied the enforcement process of it by both the federal and provincial government. They say they want to work with us, but they're also reluctant to give up those reins of justice. So they don't address us in that way. And then of course you have like mining and lands and resources and forestry and all these other sorts of things. Yeah, they don't want to relinquish any of these, bigger things that they have, like the systemic within it. Even like I mentioned, the health transformation and servicing our people to make sure they get the proper service in their health field and everything like that, whether it be systemic racism within healthcare, or even just their own issues with we have several residential school survivors, and having to be in a hospital, it's very reminiscent of the time they might have spent in the school, right? So that sort of thing is needs to be addressed and dealt with and handled. And there are different levels of government which point in different directions and different ministries to say it's not our problem, it's your problem, or it's not our problem, it's their problem. But there's so many different avenues to attack on that issue or address on that issue that the work is never done, and there's always so much of it. And we always keep moving forward, that whatever's going to help our citizens the most, that's the action that we're going to take.
So in your view as CEO, what do you feel are the most important priorities for the Anishinaabe Nation right now?
I think it's, being able to continue to support the advocacy work that we do on the one hand, and to advance the mandates that we've been given by the chiefs. However, we've always got an eye on the external political landscape, knowing that a shift in government can impact the resources that we have coming into the organization, and then the impact of coming out of a pandemic. Like, there are a lot of external factors that influence how we're able to do our work and our ability to do so. And we're fortunate that our staff were able to pivot and be accepting of a digital sort of strategy in shifting how we worked through the pandemic. And now I know the organization, and I will give kudos to a lot of long-term staff at the organization who have been through a time period when there have been significant and serious cuts because of a change in government. So we have a wealth of expertise there. And, I think in terms of ensuring that we're able to continue the work we need to do is drawing on that experience of those that we've got working for our organization.
So in closing, what keeps what's keeping you motivated to be, continue to be involved and committed to working with the Anishinaabe Nation?
I think for me is just growing up in a community where there's been a strong commitment to language, a strong commitment to who we are as Anishinaabe people, and then having 3 little girls that need that same grounding in who they are. But also from I guess a community perspective is, so many of our communities need or would like to also have those groundings and teachings and that affirmation. And that's what we're trying to do together, I think, is work towards ensuring that we're fighting for what we need to together. And, when I reference the Ngodwa Angazit Anishinaabe, that translates to one Anishinaabe family, and that's how I think we work, or we attempt to work, is ensuring that no one's left behind and we're all moving forward together.
Miigwech, Marcia.
For myself, it's just wanting to see the betterment of our people. Like, it's always been part of me to be able to help service and give back, because I feel that so much has been given to me in terms of teachings and culture and history and learning all of that. And I don't know, I just want to see our people succeed and be happy and do amazing things. And they always are, but there's always a need to help contribute a little bit more and take a little bit more of the system that kind of holds us back a little bit sometimes out of their way. If we can help move some of those pieces out of the way, that's all I'm excited about.
And for me, as much like the Grand Chief, but it's the collaboration we have and collaborative effort that we have with our communities. Nothing better than seeing an idea coming on the table that benefits a certain region, and the development of processes to make that dream come true, and to watch the faces of these people, what they've accomplished. That's something that I wouldn't give away, and that's what makes me tick.
Okay. All right. Well, miigwech. Thank you to both of you. Thank you. Thanks again to our guests in this podcast. For more information about the Anishinaabeg Nation, visit us at anishinaabeg.ca and check out Barbara Nolan's Nishnawbemoin videos at barbaranolan.com. Chimigwech for listening to Bimadzajig Ginonindwa. Until next time, Bama P.